So welcome everybody. I am addressing you from Toronto. It's a real honor to be talking to you. I wish I was there with you, and I wish you the best of luck in solving the world's problems. We try to make our bit here at Zero Footprint, but it's difficult. Let me do something with you today that I think might help you think about how to solve problems rather than give you some direct advice. I'd like to give you a framework that allows you to understand how to solve a problem. And that is a framework I call risk thinking. So one thing is for sure, that the future is always uncertain. But how uncertain just really matters, because the way we frame a problem and the way we understand whether the solution is appropriate depends on how uncertain the data is. So we live in a very complex world. For example, if we were to debate now about climate change and we have to make choices about the future, we need to really understand the data. So most management textbooks tend to not help much either. They tell us a lot about how to execute, control, measure, but they don't account for the nature of the environment in which the business operates, or in particular, if the business is in an uncertain or certain world. As it turns out, there's a fundamental difference between the type of management and decision making you would need if the world was uncertain versus solutions where the inputs are certain. For example, if I set out to open a bookstore in Vienna, I would have many examples to follow. I'd know what books cost, I can return unsold ones to publisher, etc. Contrast that with starting a new company back when Amazon decided to sell books. There were no examples, we didn't know how to operate such an internet business. And so there were significant uncertainties. So if, for example, I want to design a new renewable power source from waves, there's significant uncertainties. I don't know what price the market will bear. I'm not sure whether subsidies for wave power will be forthcoming, and so on. These two situations are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Setting up for a bookstore is what I would call deterministic, and a world around climate change is what I would call stochastic. That is, most of the data is uncertain. There are some parts of climate change that are certain. For example, we know that carbon dioxide is growing in the atmosphere, and we can measure it exactly. So that's the certain part. What we don't know is what will happen because of it. But what's important is that these two ends of the spectrum are treated very differently, and the nature of a solution would be different. So even if you know nothing about biochemistry and you're in an uncertain decision around biochemistry and you're sitting on a board analyzing biochemistry, the nature of the solution, because it's uncertain, it would take the form of a hedge. Whereas if you were sitting in an environment that was very deterministic, the nature of the solution would be, just do it. Let's look at an example. Suppose you've been given the job of what we do about security at airports. It's just post 9/11, and we really need to beef up security at airports worldwide. And your team presents two different solutions to you. One involves large groups of people with minimal educational background applying a set of predetermined rules and procedures. This is the one you actually see most of today. And the other is, say, modeled on an Israeli airline security that involves screening the passenger using highly educated, psychologically trained professionals. And which do you choose? On what basis? Looking at these two possible solutions, you can actually reverse engineer the implicit assumptions and understand what's uncertain and what's not certain. What's clearly uncertain is we don't know what the next terrorists will look like, where their terrorist implement, the bomb or whatever, will be hidden and how. And what you do know is it's probably unlikely to look like the past. So a deterministic mindset, giving a set of rules, will probably not catch that person. It might reduce the incidence of terrorist attacks, but will not fully work. Whereas something that is a hedge strategy, for example, have a very educated psychologist psych out every passenger and have a marshal in the plane in plainclothes would actually probably make a very big difference. So these stochastic and deterministic situations are really the way in which you should look at stuff. So let's take an example from the car industry. So in the early 90s, the largest car maker in the world is holding a board meeting in Michigan. And on the table is what to do with the EV1, an odd electric car that someone managed to build. An argument is made that SUVs and minivans are where profits lie, gas is $1 a gallon, and these markets will keep on growing. And there's no room for the silly little electric car, so let's kill it. So this is a deterministic solution, but you and I know that gas or petrol as you might call it, is a very uncertain quantity, the price of petrol. It fluctuates wildly. And so trying to make a deterministic solution on something that's so stochastic is the wrong form of the solution. So if you're on the board, you would know that the form that solution is taking is inappropriate. It should look like a hedge. And by the way, almost simultaneously in Japan at another board meeting, a strategy for hybrid cars was being proposed, and a request was made for $1 billion budget, small by Toyota standards, to market and evolve a car they call the Prius. This funny little car with funny little name and a mixed model of electric and gas. So this was certainly a hedging strategy because Toyota was spending relatively little, and in case this gas did become expensive, this strategy would really pay off. Well, guess what happened next? We know that Toyota now has 70% of the world's hybrid market, and that GM actually went bankrupt. So risk thinking is particularly important when framing a discussion. So we know it's scientifically verified that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is growing tremendously, and we need to stop it. On the other hand, what should we do to stop it? What kind of energy? Where will the hurricanes hit? Will there be more hurricanes? Will Canada's climate not produce much wheat in the future, and so on? So what will happen is uncertain. What drivers are pushing it is certain. So a very contentious issue is the debate on nuclear power. Should we promote it or move away from it? Germany had a simple answer: let's kill it. Now, that might have a great emotional content, but from a world point of view, it's not a clever solution. We know that nuclear power, under certain scenarios, when we find good ways to deal with nuclear waste and so on, could be a very viable alternative. Or maybe there's a new technology in fusion that makes it much more powerful and much more safe. So killing it is really like getting rid of that hedge that you would want in place, because it might actually prove to be the power of the future. So what you'd like is not the question to be framed in terms of should we keep it or kill it, but how much of it should we have? How much of solar should we have? And so on. Let me give you one last example. Suppose you were the presidential advisor and you're in the White House 4 days before the Hurricane Katrina will hit New Orleans. At this point in time, what's certain is it's going to hit New Orleans area. But what's uncertain is, will it cause damage? Will the levees stay or break? So the White House is trying to decide, should they send in the National Guard or not? And that's the wrong way to frame the question. It's how much of the National Guard should be there, and not should we have it. So in real situations, of course, there are more subtleties. So I would leave you with that thought. When you're looking at all the decisions you're going to make over the next few days, ask yourself the question, is this a deterministic situation or is it stochastic? And if it is, the nature of the solution should follow a execution strategy if it's deterministic and a hedging strategy if it's stochastic. And make sure that that is true. Exactly what hedging solution to come up with is a question, and that's where your expertise will come in. I certainly hope this helps you, and I wish you the best of luck in becoming the next United Nations. Thank you.